Another very common script that I hear people saying, especially people who are religious, and we have no issue with religion, is just that most people who say this thing are religious, which is the truth. People say that my riches are in heaven, and so because they have this belief that my riches are in heaven, they don't do anything to save or invest for their future.
Now, that is self-sabotage. My riches are in heaven. Why? Because you live in the anxiety of tomorrow. Number one, if you've not saved or done anything, clearly you live in the anxiety of tomorrow. Or also the other way, you make sure that you justify with my riches are in heaven. So when you do a lot of impasse, but when you're doing a lot of impasse, you're compensating for lack in your childhood.
Let me give you a story in relation to that, and that's personal. For me, I realized that when I got my first job in 2016, I can't tell you what I did with my first 6 paychecks. Why? I was in a buying mode. And now that I am aware, I know that I was buying to compensate for everything that I lacked in my childhood.
Exactly. So those beliefs and those statements are used to cover for some pain somewhere, right?
Yes.
And I will call that self-sabotage, because even when we talk about people who give everyone, they feel so long as they have their money, blessed is the heart that gives. By the way, I'm a believer in giving.
Yes.
But there's a difference between people who give and they are left without their needs being met. Have you met family people who are giving to the outside and their families are left suffering?
Yes, I know someone who gets paid around 100,000 shillings, and every month she spends 60,000 shillings to give to both her extended family and friends and people. She calls herself a giver, and then what happens is that her children are left without school fees.
So now you're describing another whole addiction thing, a wound that needs to heal, the wound of codependence. When you feel it is your responsibility to save the world, to make people's lives a better space, to empower, not to empower, but to ensure that they're living in comfort, to meet their own needs. And when you don't do that, you suffer the guilt. Now that is an addiction, worse than the alcohol. It is codependence.
Codependence is actually an addiction.
It is an addiction.
Okay.
It's an addiction to people. They need to save, they need to rescue, they need to fix them.
Yes.
And people who struggle with codependence have a belief, they actually have a bit of martyr syndrome, because they feel like they are better human beings than the ones who do not do no such thing. But actually, they are unwell. I mean, mentally, in terms of their mental wellness, they are struggling with their mental wellness.
Yes.
So even as we think about these statements, they are used to cover woundedness.
At the end of the day, that's
the root cause.
Yeah. Because I also know people who don't save money, and they say that as long as I'm a good person, and by that they mean give another person, save another person when they meet them suffering, that as long as I'm a good person, the universe will take care of me. But that's not logical, right? It means you're in, like you said, it means you're in a cycle of living paycheck to paycheck, and it even gets worse in that you're in the cycle of living debt to debt in the name of saving the world, but you're self-sabotaging yourself, which we put very...
But what's the difference between that person and the person who spends the whole day praying in church and believes God will come through for them?
Yeah, it's the
What's
same.
the difference between that person and another person who works for charity 24/7 and believes somehow the universe will come and provide for them? If you look at them, there's a deep-seated wooden level, because we know that life is a balance.
Yes. Yes.
If you work, then there's the space of giving others, there's the space of investing, there's the space of having comfortable life, there's the space of taking care of your offspring, there's all those spaces. If those ones are not happening, then you're not living your own life holistically. You have money wounds and they need to heal.
Another one, I also suffered from this one until I started the website, is that it's not good to talk about money. And I realized that this comes from people who grow up in homes where their parents argue a lot about money. And so you, just like you said, you start about money emotions, you start then associating money with anger and hurtfulness and abuse, and so you never ever talk about money. And so maybe this is a good time to talk about black tax, because we've been told, we've learned from childhood, we associate money with emotions of anger and parents fighting and calling each other and telling each other they'll divorce each other and stuff like that. So now this brings a situation where when we talk about black tax, now you're an adult, that's what you grew up in, you're an adult who earns X amount of money, and you're expected to send X amount of money back home, right? And because you cannot talk about money, when you ask for money, people are told, just have conversations with your family about money, have conversations about money. But you realize that you can't. Why can't people have these conversations? What's the connection?
If one was raised in an environment where conversations with money were a source of conflicts, then they associate money with conflicts.
Yes.
They will never have the freedom to talk about the money without thinking that there is an attachment with conflicts, right?
Yes.
So it is a wounded perspective.
Yeah.
But also when we think about it, in the African culture especially, apart from just don't talk about money, is we can't say no to parents.
Yes.
And while we can't have this conversation without, putting the culture into context, the truth of the money is you don't have to say to a parent, I won't give you the money.
Yes.
But also when your parents did everything and they raised you up, now is your time to give back to them. The truth is, a child is dependent on an adult for survival, because a child cannot be able to go through life. They need training, they need prevention, basically they need an adult for survival.
Yes.
But an adult should not be dependent on another adult for survival.
An adult should not be dependent on another one for survival.
No.
Okay.
Unless they are completely incapacitated.
Yes. Like you're sick, you're 90, you're in retirement and stuff like that.
Yes.
Okay.
So when we have the concept of black tax, we realize that we reverse the roles. We make the parent a child,
yes,
which they are not.
Yes.
Okay. But also, before we address the black tax, people propagate the intergenerational traumas because you did not take care of your finances, because you were busy fixing other people's lives.
Yes.
And then you depend on other people to fix your own life.
Yes.
And then these children will not fix their own life. They will depend on others, especially their children, to fix their own life. And that is how we continue the traumas from one generation to the other.
Yes.
But what we do now, we learn, we do better. We save, we invest so that we take care of our children and they won't need to take care of us.
Yes.
But I am also aware that there are parents who are not exactly struggling, but they still heap the burden of giving comfort and luxury to their children. But at this point, I would say the child needs to heal from their childhood. Because if you think about it, Agatha, this adult is stuck at a child.
Yes.
Because an adult, having an adult conversation with a parent who is an adult, they can actually be able to say, I'm not in this space.
Yes.
But remember what we said, the child remains stuck and the rational adult remains a rational adult, but the two cannot merge.
Yes.
So I can have a conversation with my parents and say, you know what, guys, I can only be able to do 1, 2, 3 for you and not 4, 5, 6. Because we are both adults and my emotions are not here. Like I'm not going to suffer guilt and everything because I am at par, my child and my adult is at par. That is if that's the case.
Yes.
But in the case where a child feels they cannot answer to the parent, they cannot negotiate, they cannot think through, then the adult is still wounded and is responding to their parent as a child and not as the adult.
Yes.
And the only remedy for that is to heal, right?
Yes.
So the aspect of how do you respond to parents as an adult, you can be able to say, this is the much I can afford, because while we are not saying entirely don't help your parents, but we're saying help them within your limits and within your will.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. The concept is, yes, you can help your parents, but it has to come with boundaries, right? And the only way to learn how to create those boundaries is when, just like you said, your child and the adult that you are is at par. That is the only way to learn how to say no, because that's the other thing that people are struggling with. People are being told that if too much is being demanded from you beyond what you can afford, just say no. Why are people unable to say no?
Statement that comes from high levels of self-awareness,
Aha.
proper boundary making.
And start from
that,
childhood.
That one has to have started from childhood, or you've healed
Yes.
the childhood dynamics,
Yes.
and you're now able to say no.
Yes.
But also there's the other aspect, Agatha, that comes a lot to play in the subject of black tax, where someone feels the need, because I'm doing well, I
Yes.
want to save my family from poverty.
They want to Jesus the whole situation. Yes.
The Jesus it. So this Jesus thing does not work, because poverty is a mindset issue.
It's not a financial issue.
It is not a financial issue.
Yes.
So you will do everything, build for them. How many children have started projects for their parents? One project fails, you start another, it fails, you start another, it fails, because you cannot deliver your family from poverty mentality. You can give them the money,
Yes.
and after 10 years you realize you empowered nothing. You're back to square zero. You buy them the car, you send maintenance fee, the car will still not be maintained. You start projects, you will have someone teach them management strategies,
Yes.
but their mind is stuck at poverty. They will self-sabotage.
Okay. So what are we supposed to do with this concept of black tax? Because I will give another practical example, is that I know someone who came up with like $2,000, set up a chicken project for the parents, and $2,000 is a substantial amount of money. She saved for a long time in order to come up with this money, because in her head she thought, my parents are elderly, I've struggled with poverty, and we've struggled with poverty throughout our lives, and I am unable to sustain, because what used to happen before is that she was required to send an X amount of money for their upkeep every month. Then she realized that sending this amount of money every month is not sustainable. So she saved $2,000, put up a chicken business, but then 4 months down the line, one, the chicken were not being fed well. Number two, food was not being bought. Number three, chicken was being distributed, given to neighbors or being sold, and eventually the business failed. And she felt very hard, of course, because she struggled to save up this money. She felt very, very hard, and of course she cannot express the hurtfulness or the anger with the parents. So these are the approaches that we are currently using to save our parents or our extended families who are going through a situation of poverty, right? Then what should be our approach?
Sadly, there's no business that succeeds unless you build an intimate relationship with that business.
That's true. As a business owner, I know that is true.
So that is the first step.
Yes.
So whose idea was it? If it was the idea of the child, it is how we need to build an intimate relationship with that business and run it.
Yeah.
So long as the parent has not owned
that business,
they have not created an intimacy with it, they will not give it the care it deserves.
Yeah.
So that is number one reason why people need to stop saving others.
Yes.
Number two, do they have the skills to run the business?
Most likely no.
Where did they learn the skills?
Yeah.
Have they implemented the skills to know that the skills work? Are they given to knowledge? Without all these factors, you will try to save your family. It will remain your initiative. At the end of the day, should you ever have a conversation, they will tell you, please stop controlling our lives.
That's true. That's how it ends up. But there's something, Joan, you haven't told us. Then how should we approach this concept of black tax? If not to pour money into the problem, because the other script that I have come across is that money will solve all my life's problems. And it's both for me and my family, right? And I know this because I used to suffer from it. In my experience with black tax, when I started working, I had this goal that I want to work so hard that I save myself with money, right? Accumulate money and become rich. But the other goal is that I want to have so much money that I save my whole family, pay their rent, buy their food and stuff like that, right? And so in my head is that money will solve all the problems. And so I tried to the best of my ability. It did not happen. And all the people that I deal with have done the same thing, right? If that is not what we are supposed to do, what are we supposed to do to approach this concept?
Let me put you on the spot on that one.
Yes.
There's no solution we can give that will ever work.
Yes.
And the reason is when you heal money wounds, you know what to do with money.
Yes.
So until you heal, you will never be able to create boundaries where black tax is concerned.
Yes.
So it is needless for me to give ways of doing it, because I'll say the same old.
That's true.
You know what? Decide how much you are able to and you're willing to. Even that decision is based on wellness or woundedness.
That is true.
Right?
Yes.
So I have no advice on this one.
Thank you. I wanted you to actually say that, because one of the most practical things that we are told to do is, you know, have a budget, decide how much you can actually afford to give towards black tax. But then you need the skill, you need to have healed in order even for you to give from a place of love, and for you to even know that this is how much you can afford. So I actually needed you as the expert to say that, so that people know. How to say it? So the other thing when it comes to black tax is the survivorship guilt. Let's address survivorship guilt. And this is a situation I've seen, because of course the Well Tribe has a lot of successful young people, you know. So it comes through where you are a child, you might have grown up in poverty or a level of it. Mostly it's because poverty is such a big factor when it comes to financial wellness. Yeah. So you grew up in poverty, and then you got a scholarship. Let's say you had like 9 siblings, and then you got a scholarship to go abroad. And obviously that brought a spiral of opportunities. You got a scholarship, you're now living in London, for example. You got a big job that comes with a big paycheck, and also who you know, your network expanded, right? And so because you are the person who survived, you feel, first of all, we've addressed the Jesus situation where you feel you have to save everyone that you left at home, but then there's the survivorship guilt, where every day you feel like, did I really deserve to be here? And so you obviously also, in a way, self-sabotage. How should we deal with survivorship guilt? How do we stop feeling like, what did I do to deserve to get out of this situation?
First of all, survivor's guilt is a trauma response.
Okay.
It is a trauma response because you're responding to the fact that you're more advantaged and others are not. So the first way to respond to stop responding to trauma is to heal the trauma.
Yes.
But besides that, is to realize that it is not the scholarship that made you who you are. It is not the opportunities. It is the skill set you attained with the opportunity. And if opportunities and occasion and everything give people that, then we would never have illiterate successful people. I mean, successful where money making is concerned, right?
Yes.
So what your family needs is to learn a set of skills, but are they willing? Or are they seated on dependence mode? Because there are people who love to be dependent, and there are people who love to act victims because they did not have advantages that you had. So if your family learned the set of skills that they need to make an income and to sustain themselves, with or without the opportunities you had, they will be okay. But the trauma response, the trauma does not let you see that, because you keep feeling like, no, but really, now I am in the US and they're struggling in some village, I don't know where, but even in that village, they're successful people. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
So what the person who survived, quote unquote, needs to learn is the people need skills. They do not need the tokens.
Yes. They need a skill, not token. And most of the time,
the token will never benefit anyone. In fact, it makes them dependent on you.
Yeah.
And you continue to feel more guilty for their struggles as they continue to struggle, and you continue to enable their struggle because...
So you actually, in your thinking, you're thinking that you're saving people, but what you're actually doing is that enabling...
Yes. Dysfunction.
Dysfunction.
Yes.
Well, hey.